Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reunion Gold's live investment summit today, hosted by Six. I am pleased to introduce our speaker for today, their president and CEO, Rick Howes. Rick's going to be reviewing a presentation, and after, we're going to be taking questions live. So a reminder to the audience that if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the Q&A chat found on the right-hand side of your screen at any time today. And as always, this event is being recorded. It's going to be available on Six.com in the coming days, so look out for that if you want a reminder or a refresher. And with that, Rick, I want to pass things over to you so that we can get started today.
Thank you very much, Cam. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining me today. I'll be giving you essentially a brief overview of the status of the company and our efforts particularly in Guyana. And maybe I'll start with just a brief introduction to myself. I'm also a recent joinee of the company. I started with the company on January 1st of this year. So I'm still drinking from the fire hose in terms of getting up to speed, but I'll certainly try my best to get the information across to you and answer any questions you may have. So just to make a disclaimer statement that there will be forward-looking statements and information in the presentation today. So I'll just give you a caution on that. So it's been a very exciting year in 2022 for Reunion. We certainly made the initial discovery of the Oko West project back in 2021, and subsequent to that have outlined what considered to be a significant mineralized envelope with over a 2-kilometer strike length and now about 575 meters. We were able to successfully raise 48 million last year to basically fund the program for drilling and the exploration activities that I'll speak about today. We already have ramped up drill capacity through the course of the year. We now have 5 diamond drills and 2 RC rigs on the site, and we completed about 50,000 meters of both RC and diamond drilling in the course of the year. And now on the site total, we have about 67,000 meters of drilling completed to the end of the year. We beefed up the senior management team, added a new vice president of exploration, the interim CEO. He has retired from the company now. He's providing advisory help to me at this stage, and as the new CEO coming in, I started, as I said, in January. Received our prospecting license from the government of Guyana and transferred the ownership of the claims to Reunion Gold. So we now have title to the prospecting license claims. I've transferred from the Guyanese license holder that originally held the mining license claims. And we were one of the top performing stocks in 2022. We were up over 200%, and we were the winner of the Mines and Money Discovery of the Year award. So certainly, all in all, a very exciting year for the company. And we hope to continue that success this year again. So just a bit of a site layout of where we are. And Guyana is in the northern part of South America. And it's essentially a country of about 1 million people. We're located in the northwest corner. Our property is located in the northwest corner of the country. The country is split in two somewhat by the Essequibo River you see in the middle there. And Georgetown is the capital city. So we're west of that, and about 45 minutes by airplane if you were flying direct to the site from Georgetown. The route to get to the site actually isn't quite that simple. There is no runway or airport there. We actually have to travel by plane to the town of Bartica, and then we take a road access from there across the river and essentially follow what's called the Peruni Road, about 60 kilometers, and then an access road into the site from there. So road access for all of our people and equipment and supplies come that route. So just a little about the discovery itself and the geology. So it's an orogenic gold deposit. It's an Archean greenstone type deposit. We have a fairly substantial shear zone that runs between the granites and the mafic rocks, the volcanics. on that side, and that is the structure running north-south that we initially discovered, and we've broken it up into two sections we call the Karuni zone, which has been the focus of most of the drilling attention over the last year and a half, and a further zone to the south called the Takatsu zone. We split that purposefully based on the sort of geology of this particular structure. So it is a new discovery. And we have completed about, as I said, about 66,000 meters along that trend now, most of it in the Karuni zone. So just the sort of the history of the discovery itself, it was really, we acquired the option, this license area from one of the Guyanese license holders back in 2018. We conducted in 2019 airborne magnetic survey, and we identified the shear zone along this greenstone and granitoid contact. And then in 21, we did some soil geochemistry along that 6-kilometer trend, and we were able to identify gold mineralization along that trend. We followed that up with some trenching results in 2020 later in the year. And got some very good results from the trenching. And then we started a scout drilling program initially in the first quarter of 21. And that confirmed that gold mineralization ran into the rocks as well, below the saprolites and in the saprolites. And then in 2020, and about middle of last year, middle of 21, we started a more extensive diamond drill program on the site. So that was really the beginning. So the recent drilling, and we've just put out a press release sort of that compiled the last drilling of the last part of last year, and we continue to have good success with the drill results. We continue to expand that mineralized envelope, and to date we have completed about 67,000 meters of drilling. The recent results are continuing to show zones of higher grades in a sort of a core area around what we call Block 4. Grades that typically are running anywhere from 2 to even 5 or 6 grams per ton, and we've even had intersections of over 60 grams per ton. You can see some of the top drill intersections there and the bottom that we've hit over the last year and a half. So the results certainly continuing to show a promise. What we've outlined is a mineralized envelope now is almost a 2-kilometer strike length of mineralization with a depth down to as deep as 575 meters. Last year, we completed a hole we called D112, which was at that time the deepest hole, and it showed very good grades and intersections, thicknesses down to that depth. Since then, we've really been infilling between the bottom of about 300 meter or 350 meters, and that's set 575 meter depth, and continued to see the trend of a very high grade core of drill results in that central part of Block 4, and it seems to be trending deeper, plunging somewhat to the north and along the dip of the plane of the shear zone, which is dipping about 65 degrees to the east, 65, 70 degrees to the east, and plunging a little bit to the north. So that's very good for the project to have a higher grade core to it, and certainly allows us to look at possibilities around sequencing that would bring in higher grade early feed to a process plant and get early payback on any investment we make on it. But it's still early days. The envelope is continuing to expand. We haven't limited it along strike yet in either direction, north or south. And if you look at the blocks further to the north and south, we also have identified mineralization down to 250 meters in the case of Block 1, 250 meters, and then about 150 meters in Block 5 and 6, which are running off the page here to the left. So it's quite a growing envelope, and so we're not pinning any mineral resource estimate now. Analysts are sort of giving predictions of anywhere from 2 to 7 million ounces in their estimates for this. We haven't pinned a number yet, and we're still seeing the expansion of this, and the step out drilling is needed to really define the boundaries and determine really what would be the appropriate mineralized envelope. Certainly this is open pittable, at least down to that depth of maybe as deep as 575 meters. But the work would be required to determine what the optimum pit depth would be for this, and exactly how many ounces would be contained within that shell that we generate as an optimum pit. But the work continues on the drilling, and we'll continue that drilling. We're trying to convert as much of that material from what we call blue sky potential, all the white areas right now, and convert as much of those into inferred resources over the next while, so that most of the drilling is focused on that depth down below 350 meters and down to 575 in block 4. And then in blocks 5 and 1 and 6, where we're just trying to push down the mineralization depth as far as we can with the drilling there. So all those areas are still part of a focus that we'll be drilling. We expect to complete that drilling in the next 6 months, and we call that phase 1 drilling, which would form the basis of producing a mineral resource estimate sometime around mid-year this year, and go from there. In a cross-section view, you can see the thicknesses are quite thick and pretty consistent. So it is a fairly nicely disseminated over wider bands, but it has higher grade core, and it certainly supports the economic mineralization for an open pit at the grades that we're looking at so far. And with that higher grade core, even better than we really could have hoped for. And that drilling hasn't obviously completed yet, so we still have work to do to finish that off. This is a bit of a further view to the south on blocks 5 and 6 in that same Kairuni zone. And these are recent holes we drilled. And all that's showing is that we're still getting mineralization. The grades are not obviously as high as block 4. But the mineralization continues, and these are still economic sort of grades for this deposit, to add to the total volume of material that we would mine as part of a open pit, or maybe multiple open pits along this strike length. So we pushed them, below into the hard rock from the original RC drilling we did in the saprolite layer. And we're pushing that down deeper as we go to see how far that extends on blocks 5 and 6. We have already done that on block 1. So this is sort of the focus for the near term, is to continue to drill that down below these elevations on block 5 and 6. This is just a texture of the mineralization you're seeing. We got visible gold and sort of some coarse grained gold in there, along with finely disseminated gold. So it's found, within the quartz host, as well as in the volcaniclastics you see to the right, both gold in volcaniclastics, gold in quartz veins. And you have different types of quartz, the smoky quartz to the right, and some of the sheared quartz to the left here. So we've got a number of textures to it, but it's basically it's hosted in sediments and volcaniclastics primarily. So the focus over that last year and a half has been on the Kairuni zone, but we do have a number of other target areas, exploration targets, that we'll be starting to look at this year. That includes these 3 zones, one called the Takatu zone to the south, which is about a 4-kilometer stretch along that same shear. The other is what we call the Bryan zone, which is an area to the west of the deposit. And the third is an area called the Carroll zone, which is immediately west of the existing Kairuni zone. So all 3 will get our attention. The reasons for some of these targets is really, particularly the Bryan zone, is that we see alluvial mining, alluvial activities all along these stream systems further to the west. The drainage flow is to the west. There's a ridge that separates the area between the Kairuni and this zone. And so there's obviously a source of gold that feeds this alluvial mining activity that we've got in here on this side. And so we're looking for the source of that in the rocks. And we will be starting with an 8,000 meter scout drilling program to see what we can find along this zone. In the Takatu zone, we'll start with soil geochemical works and look for any anomalies associated with similar issues, the downstream alluvial workings to the east, where the drainage is running south and east in this case. and look for the sources of those. And the third area being the Carroll Zone, which is an area that we will start with doing some ground magnetics. This is an area that G2 is really active, looking more in the volcanics and has found their Oko main zone in the volcanics. We haven't really done any drilling in the volcanics. We are seeing evidence of magnetic lows, that what is the signature of the Kairuni zone in the Carroll zone. So we'll be looking to see if those magnetic low zones have potential for mineralization in them as well. So the big focus, as I said, to summarize that program, will be two pieces. One will be the step-out drilling of the Kairuni zone in support of the maiden resource estimate, which we again plan to produce by mid-year this year. And the second is the exploration activity in those three zones I talked about to follow up in some new targets in those areas. So that's that total program combined is about 50,000 meters of drilling. We have sufficient funds to complete all of that drilling, as well as produce the initial maiden resource estimate, and even carry on with a PEA study following that. So we have 44 million on the balance sheet at the end of the year. So we're well funded to carry out this work. If we go further beyond to the PEA, we want to move to a pre-feas, we would have to start to do some of that drilling that would be required to convert the inferred resources in the open pit envelope into indicated resources. So we have identified how much drilling that would be and the cost for that drilling. But that decision about doing that drilling will have to be made, after we complete the maiden resource estimate and the PEA towards the second half of the year. So that's just a picture of the campsite. So we've certainly about 120 people on site now. So it's quite an active camp. So we have to expand it to accommodate the additional drillers and the additional geologists and people on site to support all these exploration activities, and continue to improve the sort of setup for accommodating supplies and other materials that we have to store on site and move from. So the capital structure of the company, essentially largely institutionally held. Major shareholder is Dundee Resources with a 16.5%, followed by Jupiter. Barrick Gold as a strategic owns 8.1%. We have a number of other institutions around the 8 and 3, 4, 5, and 8% range, and the management and directors hold 6.9% of the company. Been busy on the ESG side. We're completing the environmental baseline studies currently, both the wet and dry season, looking at the biodiversity, water quality. The baseline survey is required to be able to start to do the environmental impact assessment. We also are active in terms of a medical outreach program. The region is not populated. It's Amazon rainforest mostly. There are only really two activities going on in the area. One is forestry, and the other is artisanal or alluvial mining. And our neighbor to the north is G2 Gold, who is the only other sort of active explorer mining company in the area. There's really no major communities in the area, but there is a sort of artisanal mining camp a little bit to the northwest that holds about 200 people that supports the alluvial mining activity in the area. So we put a medical outreach program to help out with looking after the people that are operating those alluvial operations in the area, and the wives and children that come along with them. So that's been a very positive program, and giving free medical help help and service to those people. And also we've set up bursaries for the geological studies at the University of Guyana to help out there. We are going to sort of expand our ESG activities to include site rehabilitation and reforestation activities in partnership with the Guyana Forestry Commission this year. And we are just beginning a stakeholder mapping and engagement strategy for our advancement on de-risking of the project going forward. So early days on a lot of this work, but we are moving forward as fast as we can on this. So I would, maybe that's the quick overview. I would open the floor to any questions anyone has and pass it back to Ken from here.
Yeah, absolutely, Rick. Thank you so much for the great presentation. And yeah, just as a reminder to anyone in the audience, if you have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A chat on the right-hand side of your screen. But to get started, Rick, first question, could you tell us about your impression of what it is to work in Guyana so far?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, certainly, I have been there twice, and even before I started, I had the opportunity to go there back in June of last year, and then again in December. First of all, it's a very unique country in one sense that it's going through a very significant transformational change with the recent oil and gas discovery, and so probably from being one of the lowest GDP per capita countries in the world back, 5 years ago. It's one of the fastest growing countries from a GDP growth point of view in the world today. I think was the #1 country in 2022 in terms of GDP growth, and it's already one of the top GDP per capita countries in South America. So it's gone from being the poorest country to it's moving quickly to be one of the richest countries. So that is an amazing thing, but also has its potential pitfalls to it. And if you're looking at Venezuela next door, what you want to be concerned about obviously is not allowing that wealth creation to really not be managed properly and not be beneficial to the people in a way that ensures that that the country benefits collectively from this newfound wealth that's being created with the oil and gas discoveries offshore. So I met with some of the ministers and the vice president, and I can tell you that first of all, they are very aware of the risks of their countries going to go through in terms of being a very rich country and what that could mean, and the concerns about corruption and mismanaging the country and the wealth of the country. So they are certainly working closely, and they've modeled themselves after Norway in terms of how Norway benefited from its major offshore oil and gas discoveries, and not modeling themselves after Venezuela and maybe some of the other countries that have gone through those sort of very bad situations. Now, I can say that mining to them is still very important. Mining was a key part of the country. Bauxite and other mining discoveries and mines would have supported the country in those years when it was one of the poorest countries. And they still see mining as a third leg, if you want, or second leg of the stool, in order to continue to diversify their economy and make sure that it's not all dependent on oil and gas, and they have other sources of income coming from other industries. So.
Sounds dynamic. Another question we've got is if you could just elaborate, talk to the audience about what made you come out of retirement to work at Reunion Gold.
Well, I can tell you that retirement is a great thing, and it was a very hard thing for me to make that leap back into the industry. I was quite comfortable sitting on mining company boards and enjoying some free time to do some other pleasurable things, but this project was probably one of the few that I've ever seen that would have been enticing enough, and it was enticing enough to bring me back in. And really the three things I look at when I'm sort of thinking about it is what is the company's management team and board like? What's their sort of skill set and capability to operate and be successful And then the second would be, what's the asset like, and what is the quality of the asset that they own or have that would make this interesting. And the third really would be, what's the jurisdiction like that they're operating in. And when I look at all three of those things, I mean, they are, I would say, as good as I've seen, as a combination of three things that I've seen and so I see many opportunities, but to come back into the industry, gang, but none of them enticed me until I saw this one. So I do know the team a little bit. I know the David Fennell, who's the executive chairman. I've known him for quite a few years, so I was getting briefed on the story quite regularly and updated as to how it was progressing. So eventually he convinced me to go to site and take a look. And once I'd been to site and once I'd seen the country, I was convinced it was a good idea to jump back in.
All right, fair enough. Konstantin wants to know, has anything changed for you as a result of the Toraparu project being reevaluated and pending stop for the time being?
Well, I mean, the only thing that sort of links us to that story is really the road, the Puruni Road, which they obviously had the need to upgrade that road, which would have clearly been beneficial to us if they completed that. Other than that, I mean, their story and their situation, I would have said, is a cautionary tale about, they had done a PEA and were sort of jumping right into construction or preparation for the development of the project. And, the steps, were kind of a quick jump, and maybe not all the loose ends were tied together before you made that jump. So they had to put it on hold. There are some issues they've been facing, and I would have said some of those are just they tried to move a little too fast and didn't quite dot all the I's and cross all the T's along the way to make sure that they had secure land position, they had security and permissions, appropriate permissions from the government, and so on. So,
right. Terrence is wondering what the cutoff date for the maiden resource study is.
What's the timing, or sorry?
The cutoff date.
It'll be around the end of May, it looks like, based on the drill plan that we have to sort of fill in any of the gaps that we have left to fill in on that envelope. But yeah, end of May, likely. All
right, fair enough. With a lot of shares outstanding, David's wondering if there's any plans for a share consolidation.
Certainly, that's a consideration that we at the board level have been discussing. Early days, but we do see that it would be right or smart to do a share consolidation. Just a question of what's the right timing to do it. Would we do it around sort of completion of the major study phases, or prior to a major financing, or any sort of a major transformational type event to make sure that we crystallize the value of the asset before we do that.
Right. Dave's wondering why you left Dundee, and if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I actually just retired from Dundee because I'd been there about 11 years, and I had been the CEO for the last 7. Like any CEO, you can do everything you can and you think you can to kind of contribute to the success of the company. But there's a point when you realize that, maybe it's time for someone else to try and take a run at the job and maybe bring new ideas and new energy into it. So for me, it was a great job. I had a lot of fun, worked with some great people, and we had quite good success. And there was nothing reason to leave other than the fact that I myself decided that I was ready to move on to different things. And the main one was I was looking to go on to boards and do that. And so I got involved in a number of other companies, on the boards of other companies. So it was also fun for the next few years. So
fair enough. Tony's wondering this: of the Brian, Carroll, and Takutu zones, which area excites you the most, and why?
Yeah, you know what? I would have said the Brian zone because of the size of it, and it is totally untested. We have done some work on Takatu, and we have not done work on Carroll, but we have a sense of sort of what it might be. So, I would say the Brian zone sort of got the biggest area and the biggest potential of the 3.
Okay. Dave says this, G2's on strike, yet their FS shows no exploration expenditures so far as he can see. Did they get their acreage after your greenfields work?
No, they actually had their property before us, so they were ahead of us on getting on that ground. We came in after them. I think the option agreement we did, and you'd have to someone who's been with the company would know more, but longer. But we got it in 18, and I think they had it a year before, maybe us, or a year or two before us.
Right. Follow-up question: how often do you think that you're going to be going on site? And for that matter, how much time do you think you're going to be spending?
Well, being an operator type guy, a developer, I kind of like to be at the mine. I'm not as interested in being in the corporate office. So, I'll find as many times as I can to go to site. I'm headed there next week. I've already been there a couple of times. I will certainly be a regular at the site. It's more to get integrated into the fabric of the country and get to know the people and get to know, how to build relationships within a country. For me, that's the important thing, both with employees and with the government and with other stakeholders in the country. So I like to get to site, and that's going to be one of my priorities.
All right, fair enough. Constantine has another question today, just about the other projects. What about the other projects in French Guiana and Suriname?
Yeah, I mean, we still obviously have a couple of good projects in French Guiana, the Dorland project and Boulanger project. The Boulanger project is one, I think, very exciting geology, very exciting potential, but the concession has to be renewed now, and so that's going to take some time. The government's been, I'll say, a little less supportive than the Guyanese government in terms of wanting to see these projects move quickly along. So we're slowing down our activity there, really in response to the slowing down that the government has done. So we won't be as focused on French Guiana until the government sort of starts to show more interest in mining. It's not a place that we want to put a lot of dollars in until we see the right signs from the government. And I think the local government wants it, but the French government really controls that in France, and so decision making is slow and time consuming, and the expectations are pretty low from their perspective about the contributions that mining can make to their economy. So whereas Suriname, I think, is a different story. It's certainly much more like Guyana. They do want to see activity, and they do want to see the mining as a potential source of economic growth of the country, and so we'll be active in Suriname. We did have the Northwest Extension project. We did some early work on. And we're looking at other greenfield potential areas around Suriname. Again, they won't take priority. I mean, we won't put a lot of money into them. They'll just be really project generation efforts in those areas to kind of set us up for a pipeline of future potential projects. Most of our focus and money and effort will go into the Oko West and the surrounding region and Guyana in general, because I think there's a lot of upside in this area for just new discoveries, because it's relatively unexplored, or it's certainly underexplored yet. And we're well positioned, given our sort of long history of being in all of the Guyana Shield, but Guyana in particular, to be able to kind of jump on the opportunities that are there for new discoveries and so on. So we'd like to be a major player there and continue to be a big part of their country. And we're seen as that already. I mean, Reunion is the established mining company for the longest time in all of the Guyana Shield, but mostly in Guyana as well. So,
all right, Dave wants to know what your thoughts and feelings are about your on-site geological managers.
Well, that's an excellent team. I mean, the DNA of the company is definitely exploration. They've been very successful in discoveries. The history of the company goes back really more than 40 years. If you include, it's the same group of people that go back to the days of Golden Star, Cambior, etc. They've stayed together. Reunion is really just the reunion, the reunion of that group, and the reformation of that group about 20 years ago. They discovered Omai, they discovered Rosabelle, Matthews Ridge. Almost all of the major mining discoveries were made by this group of people. And so, nobody knows the Guyana Shield better than this group of exploration people.
Awesome. I was wondering, could this project be a candidate to be signaled as a green project?
Well, that's kind of the other thing that excites me about this project is we are in an isolated sort of remote region for sure in the Amazon rainforest, but we have been looking at some new technology for powering the project. And there are two options really that we think we have to get green energy to the project. One is the potential building of the Amila Falls hydropower project the government's been talking about, which is about 90 or 100 kilometers away from us. But it's a 165 megawatt power plant, and we've been in discussions with the government about that being the main power supply for the project. And that if that goes ahead, that's a really good opportunity to power it with the hydropower. The second is we're looking at this new technology, which is called run-of-river hydropower generation. It's something that a Canadian company has been working on for over 15 years and is developing it. And we're just doing a feasibility study on it now. So it's really just turbines, water turbines, like you see in the ocean, turbines that are being used to generate power from tidal waves, from waves. This is similar technology, only uses the river flow as a means to turn a turbine that essentially generates power. So that technology is showing lots of potential and could be another alternative to sourcing power for the project. We would need something like 40 megawatts or in that range. So this technology, it looks like because we were located between two big river systems, there's a number of locations for putting this technology in that would be suitable for providing the power we need.
All right. Well, listen, Rick, I really appreciate the conversation today, you coming on, going through the presentation in this great Q&A period. But that looks like all the questions we have for today. So before we wrap up, I want to pass things back to you for some closing remarks, if you have any.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that everyone has stayed on the call with us and heard that. We're certainly open to any follow-up questions you have. You may have. You can pass them through our investor relations group or send a message to me directly if you want, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.